All right. Put on my headphones and get a little bit better sound quality here. Excellent. Well, I'm going to dive into Cloud Custodian today. So we're going to look at how we might go about accomplishing the build of a Cloud Custodian sort of an environment. This is the Cloud Custodian webpage. We could just do this and maybe have a little bit easier view. And yeah, we'll go ahead and just have a little version of me. So Cloud Custodian is a tool for managing, basically managing your cloud and leveraging this idea of tagging to do that. And what I wanted to do today is just get an environment up and running. Actually, we can log into, go ahead and log into Amazon here. And yeah, we're going to sign into a different account because we're going to use an IAM user. And we're going to go ahead and grab our credentials. And we want that one. And then, of course, we need the extra credentials. Keep it safe, as they say. All right, so in we go. And so all I'm going to do is I'm just going to spin up a resource. So this is pretty classic, right? I'd like to get something running. Here we'll go. Yeah, we'll stay in Oregon. That's fine. And we'll go into... let's see, we're going to go to ECS. We want to launch an instance. Perfect. How about we just launch an instance? We'll call it Ubuntu test because that's what I tend to use. Or actually, I guess here we're in Amazon, so we can call it AL2 test. Add additional tags. We should add a tag. Sure. How about creator? And we're going to say our Starmer created it, and yeah, that's good enough for a tag. You know, and maybe we'll just leave it at that. How about application? Yeah, we can go ahead and use Amazon Linux. We'll use just a little tiny one. And key pair, go ahead and use my key pair. And we can allow SSH. So all we'll do actually we can allow HTTPS from the internet too, because we could eventually spin something up here maybe if we want to. Make it usable. And we'll keep with basic storage. So okay, this is nothing super exciting here. Oh, I see it. Thanks. I wanted to we'll just leave that. I'm gonna say launch. So it'll go do its thing. Now we should have an instance here. And eventually it'll go build. And that's great. That really helps us get into a position where we can basically get things building. But the whole point of this is to give us an environment where we can start looking for tags and policy. Now, we're going to go through and actually look at some of this. We're going to leverage the getting started process here because this is, I find, the quickest way to get things up and running. And the other thing we're going to want to do is make sure that we have a Docker environment because we're going to want to test this in Docker. So Docker PS, is Docker running? No, it's not running. So go ahead and say start Docker. In this case, I'm using Docker desktop. I find it to be fine for a single user. If you're an organization, you have to consider the costs involved, but it is a pretty powerful tool. I've been pretty happy with it. I've also used the Rancher desktop version of Docker to give a similar kind of look and feel. But you know, honestly, the Docker tools work well, and that's what I tend to keep with. So we'll go ahead and we'll just go ahead and say, hey, why don't we try this thing that this system here seems to think is going to work? And if I do that, I think it's going to. Well, first test get Cloud Custodian. That's fine. We'll go ahead and let this run. Thinking. double thinking. Okay, so first off, it basically runs, it tries to do something, it looks for this file, policy.yaml, and then there's no policy file, so there's nothing to do. So why don't we see if we can get a policy? So why don't we look at a couple things. So one is we don't have a policy. Also, there's this little thing in here in this Docker run, which is bring in an environment file and copy in all the environment resources that I need for my application. That's great if you happen to have all of these resources defined as environments or environment variables. But I think right now I don't have anything defined. So I guess we'll do this. Yeah, so I don't even have an AWS environment of any nature defined. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new terminal, because this, I guess I probably don't want to show you guys. Well, I can show you the basics of what I'm going to do. So I'm going to create an environment file. And we can look at our AWS credentials over here. So now we're going to say AWS default region US West 2. The default in general is US West 1. Cloud Custodian actually does want you to specify what region you're working in. So many things really require a default region, require a region to be defined, that I always find it's best to make sure that you have that defined. And then the other thing we're going to need, and I'm not going to paste these in here right now, I'm going to put them off screen, but we need an AWS secret access key. And we need AWS access key ID. And so these you get from your IAM configuration in AWS. I'm not going to obviously show those to people, but I am going to go ahead and fix them. So I'm going to do this off screen. And of course, I should figure out where I am. Okay, that's a little bit better. We got our default ones here. Okay, so we've got our Cloud Custodian runtime, and instead of running it like this and having it generate this access key, actually, I guess what I can do is I can just do cat AWS env and pipe that through a lookup for those. Anyway, so I should get the same output. There's still nothing to do because we don't have a policy defined. So let's define a really simple policy. And I'm going to go back to the Chrome view here. And we're going to look for a basic policy. And of course, this is a little tricky unless you can find one. But we're going to go down here beyond getting started to example tag compliance policy. And what we really want to do, I mean, this is a good example, but it would be nice if they gave it to you in a way that you could just copy it, because this is useless with all this extra cruft in it. Instead, we're going to go and actually build out a simple little policy. So here is looking for EC2 tag compliance, and it has mark as well because there's an action defined. I want to start just with the simplest thing, which is filters. So getting the engine, basically the custodian engine, to go and find a tag and discover it is sort of the first thing we're going to do. So we're going to create a policy that's basically based on this very top section. And we can go ahead and copy and paste that. So we can create a policy YAML file. Okay, so now we have that much. And now let's see in terms of filters. Let's see if we can't figure out a filter. So the filters, we're looking for a couple of different things. So here there's effectively a default filter parameter for state. And we can look for something that's running. We can also look for tags, and this is the area where I'm usually expecting the system to look for functionality. And yeah, so here there are a couple of explicit tags. So a tag AWS autoscaling group name. So that's assuming that the instance is not in an AWS autoscaling group. And that the instance has a tag of, or does not have a C7n underscore status tag. So basically, there are three default filters. And what we're looking for here is either that the state is running, and we can actually include that one because we spun up an instance. So we can go ahead and include this filter in our file. Okay. And then we're also going to look for, oh, I actually need a hyphen there. Okay, making it an array. So we're also going to make sure that it's not a part of an AWS autoscaling group. I think this is a reasonable filter. So we'll go ahead and grab that one. And of course now it doesn't need the extra tag because I grabbed it that time. All right. And then we're also going to look to see if this has already been in some fashion tagged by C7n. It turns out the C7n status tag is one that Cloud Custodian, 7 letters between C and N, I guess is the idea, is not present. So there is no Cloud Custodian tag being derived here. And so then we can also look for, actually I haven't looked into the type tag count, so I think that assumes that there are tags there. And what we wanted to get is a list of, this is I think probably the more interesting part for all of this, which is, hey, look for any of these tags. So these are the default project tags that you would use to, for example, do cost management. Hey, who created it? What cost center is it associated with, and what project is it a part of? These are pretty common ways of breaking down your cloud cost management. So, basically saying, yeah, I want these guys to be present. So we'll go ahead and see if we can't fix this this cruft that's going to come along with this. And so, yeah, we're gonna get rid of all of that. Nice ASCII characters, but not exactly what we want. All right, so we've got that, and then let's see, we can go ahead and block remove this. Maybe that's enough. There's an extra space there, and then we'll go ahead and do a block cleanup at the end of this too, assuming that it'll let me. Okay, so that's actually, so this is a pretty basic policy, and it should look for basically things that are not tagged. And it says if any of these tags are missing, then select an instance. We created an owner tag, if I recall correctly, here a minute ago. So the instance should have that, but not cost center and project. And then with actions, right now, the only actions that it's proposing, and we haven't added these yet, is actions to look at marking for operation. So this is where this C7N status tag comes into play, because right now it's not there, which means that it would not be included. But if I have an action, then I'm going to actually want to execute an action. So that would be another policy stanza rather than this one. This one's just going to look for something where there's nothing marked, so it hasn't been considered at all. And what do I want to do? I want to stop it in 4 days. So in order for that to happen, you have to run this tool again. There's no automatic terminate and stay resident kind of classic operation here. But we can actually go ahead and run this. Actually, the first thing we can do is we can just see if we can actually run this application. So let's see if now that I have a policy, and let's see, yes, I am mapping the volume, current location policy to YML. Okay, see, that's gonna break if I do this without. Well, we'll go ahead and run it. Yep, still nothing to do because I have to move policy.yaml to policy.yml. So go ahead and run this, and it says, I don't like what you gave me. So it does not like the policy file. It looks like my YAML is not particularly pleasant to it. So let's go ahead and see if we can't. Oh, well, that was not exactly what I meant to do. So if we move policy.yml to policy, no wait. Get rid of that one and then move policy YAML to YML. Okay, so let's try this again. So now it should actually run. This is better though. At least now it's saying top level data structure should be mapping dict instead found a list exiting. Okay, so what did we do wrong with our policy? Our name, filters. And so if we pop back into here, actually looks reasonably good. Let's see if I can't find another policy somewhere for us to have a look at. So filter, yes, type, key, value. Okay. Create a new custodian YAML. Okay. I see. I missed part of the project. There we go. Let's see if it likes that better. Still doesn't like it. Policy files to okay. Yes? Thinking. That looks good. Filtered from 1 to 1, EC2. Okay, this actually looks good. So what did we get? Let's look at our output directory. And the run log should be just the thing we just saw there. Okay, and then metadata tells us sort of what it did in terms of the run. So I think this is information about the different resources. So here's the policy that we were running against. config information, what region, and then what regions. So we're only looking at US West 2, but it looks like there's a way to tell it to look at all kinds of regions, so that's a good thing. Then that ran. It tells us how many resources it found, how long it took, and how long it took to run. But the thing that we really want to look at is the output, so our resources. So what resources did you find? And sure enough, here is a mapping to an EC2 instance, and it's got instance ID of X. I started it with key RHS in US West 2. I picked 2A. It has name and address and a VPC that it's associated with, yada, yada, yada. And somewhere in here, if we can find it, are the tags. And so actually we didn't even tag it correctly because I tagged it with creator and we were looking for tag owner. So it's like, I don't think you even have the right tags in here. So what can we do? Well, I think the thing that we could probably go about doing is looking at the actions that are available, because now we have a functional solution. And here we were looking at getting started, and we found our values for filters, so that's all good. But why don't we go ahead and look at actions? So what kind of actions do we have available to us? Well, we can do a webhook action, which looks like we're going to call a specific service. Let's go do something and post it. And that's probably useful if you want to push data to somebody and say, hey, something happened or didn't happen, or you should have done this or you shouldn't have done this. So that's one part of sort of what's going on here. And yeah, so then we'll look at actually doing some other actions that are not webhook actions. It looks like that's the pretty basic one that it thinks is important. But what we really want to do is have the system execute against a certain environment. Oh, here's how you run multiple regions. That's cool. And then reporting against multiple regions. That includes just pulling multiple of them, because we don't call out regions in the policy. Okay. Lots of different pieces and parts. This is all good. And what is this? So, oh, that's nice. So you can set start and stop dates, basically conditionals against your execution. So that's actually pretty powerful. And I would say that this document would fail. I think that this is there's some formatting messed up here. So we're not going to try to run this one explicitly, but we are going to look and see what else we've got here. Looking for old logs or logs that haven't been written to. So that's actually probably a useful example. All right, so we're looking for only 5% of resources. So I don't care about all logs, but just give me 5% of them. Isn't that good? And then do something like delete logs. So actions. You know, this is really where the rubber meets the road. We've proven that filters work, and now we want to look at something like actions. So what kind of action can I have? Well, what if I try to do a mark for operation, and let's see if we can't fix this one. So if we vi policy.yaml, and so here it looks like we're 2n. And we need to get rid of a bunch of this stuff. So get rid of the end there. Get rid of to the end there. Okay, so that puts that right. And actually, that looks like that lines up as well. So it looks pretty good. So now what exactly does this do for us? Why don't we go ahead and rerun our policy. All right, so what we've done is we've actually also caused an action to happen. Tagging one resource for stop. So now I've tagged this resource. So let's actually go look at the output. EC2 tagging, and let's look at our resources, and let's see if we search for tag. So the tags that we have here are still just these two, but what we should be able to do is if we run it again, it should get the updated resource definition. And now I have a new tag. I did not create a key called made status. So this is being used by Cloud Custodian to define when something should happen, and it defines what action should be taken. So in 4 days, today being February 1st, so I guess 4 days plus the weekend, it's basically saying go ahead and stop this instance. Now I can fix that too, because we can go in and we can actually add some tags. So we'll go create another policy here. And let me see, I do have an example of that I should go find real quick. Let's see if I can remember where I put it. It's not there. How about here? No, not there. Let's see, groups. How about all my groups? That's right. I'll have to go through and sort of collect all of this. Report and add tags. I think that's what I was thinking about. Nope. Okay, it's not there. Okay, so we're going to have to do a little bit more digging here. It's okay. That's how this works. Is that if you can't find it, you got to go figure out how to find it. So let's see. How about example tag compliance policy in the documentation? So we've seen this one. This is what we just worked through. But there's actually yeah, so we can actually look at this policy, this set of policies. Because what we really want to do is we can do an action of type tag. So we can add tags. But where was there was actually a really nice example in here. That's right, it was all the different resources. Tag compliance across resources. I think this was, yeah. So here we can just add an action to say, let's go ahead and add these resources. So we're just going to add this to our same policy. No need to make something new for this, because we can add multiple actions. So okay, so we've marked it for an operation. And what we can now do is we can add a new action tag, and we're going to go ahead and get rid of a couple of characters here. Okay, so now our tag is matched to all of this, and we said we wanted cost center, and so we're going to call cost center CCS Cloud Custodian. Actually, we're going to see cost center is CCS, and then we're going to add another one, type tag. We're going to say key cost center, or rather we need to do owner, and value is rstarmer, because that's who the owner is in this one. And then we'll go ahead and do type tag. We'll get the last needed key in here, which is key is project, and then value is Cloud Custodian. Okay, so that's great. So if it's not marked, it's going to go through and add all these marks. Isn't that wonderful? But you know, we actually probably want to do something else, which is we're going to want a new policy. And so I'm going to go ahead and copy and then we're going to just say we'll copy all of that. No. Come on, VI, you can do this. So actually, this example has pretty good things. So here's another example of tag compliance. But here's really the key interesting thing. So here we can go ahead and say, you know, we want to look for this, and we want to mark it for op. And then here's really the thing that we want. If these things are not, if things are defined, then let's go ahead and get rid of them. And the only thing that I find interesting about this one is the C7N status, because we didn't see a C7N status in the resources. So I'm going to get rid of this. And I'm going to paste in this. Okay. And we can put in a little bit of commentary. Go ahead and go to, actually we'll go ahead and do the second one first. All right, and then we can go in here and we can just say from CC do we not have to say that because this is where it's from? Isn't that brilliant? And here we can actually also include, we can also just actually put the same thing because it's effectively the same information. All right, so we have our tag compliance mark. Hey, if you don't have these resources defined and there's no C7N status tag, and we're not in an auto-scaling group, then go ahead and mark this for deletion. But we're also going to say, oh, we're going to cheat a little bit. Actually, I guess we could, you know what, we'll just do this as a separate, we'll do this as a separate one here. And we're going to say, grab all that again. And we're going to paste that in here, and then so again, if it doesn't have this, so actually in this case I don't care. I want to make sure that I tag them, which will tag everything. So actually I want to say, yeah, if these are absent, then we'll go ahead and tag them. So that's really the key thing that I'm looking for. So we can just say, yeah, if we get here and these are missing, then we'll go ahead and tag them. So, and that should, I believe, that's going to work. Yeah. All right, filters, and then we need an action. Okay. And what it should then do is actually remove the tag at the end, because the third operation is, hey, if these things have been tagged, then go ahead and get rid of them. So we're going to go ahead and run our Docker command again. Okay, resources were tagged, and resource counts. So there's nothing now that has a compliance mark that fails. So if we go look at the output, so we can say tag compliance mark and tag compliance unmarked. But if we look at EC2 add missing tags, and we look at the resources there, we see our new resource and tags. So the tags have not yet been added, but if we look at the untag, EC2 tag compliance unmark, resources. There's nothing there because it runs effectively in parallel because the tags didn't exist yet. So if we run this one more time, now we should actually unmark our resource. And so unmark resources, there's nothing there. But if we look at our add missing tags resource, nothing. And if we look at the EC2 tag compliance mark, nothing there either. Okay, so now we can go check and see if our instance still exists. Because wouldn't that be fun? All right, so if we go back to our instances and view all instances, so we've got AL2 test. This is our instance ID. We can scroll down here. We can have a look at the tags. Oops, here we go. So now our project, cost center, owner. I still have a made status, so that's interesting because basically it's saying nothing was complaining. So I would have expected that one to go away. So I'm not sure if that's a bug or if that doesn't matter because it would get reset. But what we can do, just to try this, like why not? Let's go ahead and remove the cost center. We can remove that too because we have a creator now that's correct. So we can go ahead and say save. So if we go run now, let's see what we get out of here. Looks like it caught something. So add missing tags. Yep, sure enough, here's our instance that has a tag missing. If we look at the tags that it does have, project it has, made status it has, still the same, stop on the 6th, but that makes sense. Right, and if we look at the mark resource, here's our resource that got marked, and that's fine. And then if we look at our unmark resource, tag mark, tags, and unmark, still nothing. Which is fine because there was nothing to unmark, but it doesn't keep a record, I guess, of something that was unmarked. That's interesting. That was not exactly what I was expecting. Anyway, so this is basically some of the basics of Cloud Custodian. Now, you know, how you actually start using this, I think next time what we'll probably do is I'll jump on and we can look at comparing the tags that exist to some of the cost center data, because I think that's one of the interesting areas. Obviously, this kind of thing also needs to be tied into basically at least a CI or CD type process. So you want to run it from some kind of a scheduled task. I think there's some examples on the Cloud Custodian site that we can look at for spinning this up in AWS Lambda, if I remember correctly. Let's see here, AWS Cloud Control reference, was this where? Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of information. I mean, I guess that's another thing is we can look at how you would actually start leveraging this and like launch it in a really usable state. This was just looking at sort of how the heck does Cloud Custodian work, and how can you start managing tags and managing against tags, which is, I think, the really interesting thing. The other use of tags, like I was just saying, is when you're looking at the cost of clouds and where that comes into play. And yeah, I think that's going to be a large part of sort of the future of where these things fit. So I think this was hopefully useful for folks, you know, trying to look at Cloud Custodian. Planning on doing plenty more of this. Obviously, there's a lot more here just in terms of Cloud Custodian that we can start looking at. I do want to turn this into something that can start being scheduled and can start being reviewed on a scheduled basis, because I think that's going to become more useful for folks. There are lots of interactions here that I think become incredibly powerful as we look at managing cost, managing your cloud, and managing resources that are getting deployed, because it's so easy. I mean, here I spun up an EC2 instance through the console. It took basically no effort whatsoever. But now I need to remember to turn it off. If I don't, I start paying charges for it that are maybe significant. Now, okay, we picked a free tier eligible instance, and if I'm not really using it all that much, it's not actually going to cost me anything. Although the storage still costs. So even if you get rid of the compute cost, there is we created an 8 gigabyte disk for this instance. And often we're thinking, oh, 8 GB, who cares? It's $1.50 or $2 at 25 cents a gigabyte. I can't remember what the current rate is, but it's like 9 or 12 cents a gigabyte a month. Still adds up, right? And that's the sort of thing that we're trying to capture here, is learning what exists, where it exists, how we actually manage working with and through these different technologies and tools. This is an incredibly powerful tool for helping with that. And as you can see, building a basic policy, you need to understand what you're filtering against, and there's a lot there. There's a whole way of finding the schema for Cloud Custodian, for example. Like, what does it know about AWS? It does only know about cloud, so it knows about a bunch of different clouds, but it really only knows about cloud-based resources. So this is really targeted at that part of the market, but it can really help you manage the infrastructure and the services that you're looking at. Anyway, hopefully this was useful. If you do like it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Like I said, we'll probably be doing this fairly often, just trying to working through some of these different tools and components. I personally expect to be able to do this across a large swath of the cloud sphere in terms of how to actually leverage and run these different tools and components. And thanks for watching.